The thing I love about charcuterie boards is that they're like edible works of art. I'm a really visual person, so even if the food tastes good, if the presentation is beautiful, it makes it that much better. Kind of like how the same gift feels so much more if it's beautifully wrapped versus presented like in a paper bag. Presentation goes a long way. Now, to go one step further and get that perfect trifecta for food, it also needs to be healthy. And since at TrueWell we're all about an anti-inflammatory diet that's sugar-free and gluten-free, I'm going to show you how to create a gorgeous summer charcuterie board that's also anti-inflammatory. Hey, it's Laura with TrueWell, and we really need to start this conversation out with defining what qualifies a board as charcuterie and how we make those things anti-inflammatory. So starting out, the word charcuterie is actually French and it means cured meat. And if you know anything about an anti-inflammatory diet, you know that cured and processed meats are a big no-no because they're highly inflammatory, which obviously poses a challenge when you want to make an anti-inflammatory version of a charcuterie board. Okay, so when you're making an anti-inflammatory charcuterie board, you have two options. The first is in regard to the meats, and then the second is going to be in regard to the cheeses. Okay, so number one, you can find meats that would be great on a board that are not cured and don't have nitrates, or you can just skip the meats altogether. But just know that this will technically not be a charcuterie board at that point. Instead, it would be like a veggie or a veggie and fruit and cheese or any combination of those type of board. You can also include any of those meats in and then just not partake in those meats and sticking to an anti-inflammatory way of eating. Or you can purposely decide that you're going to just have like a little cheat treat meal. You're a grown adult and I leave it to you to make that decision on your own, but choosing the correct meats per the guidelines I just gave are what will keep that meat part anti-inflammatory. Okay, so the second part is in regard to the cheeses. If you found that you need to be dairy-free to reduce inflammation as well, again, you can just skip the cheeses or go for any of the same options that I gave for the meats. Now, per anti-inflammatory guidelines, choose organic cheese if at all possible, because the fats in the cheese will have a better omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. If you want the full how-to video on creating charcuterie boards, I'll link to that video here and in the description below. Okay, so let's get to the summer board that I made and what ingredients I included to make it look like this. So the summer veggies that I used were zucchini, summer squash, asparagus, green onions, bell peppers in all different colors, and some cherry tomatoes that come in like yellow and orange and red colors. I added 2 different types of cubed cheese, and I put our homemade ranch dip in the middle to dip the veggies in, and I'll link to that recipe below or in the full blog post if you want to go to print the full recipe for this off. The summer fruit that I used were cherries, blueberries, strawberries, kiwi, mango, pineapple, and watermelon. So for this board, I started out with placing the dip right in the middle of the board. And then I added in the asparagus in a sort of an X pattern to kind of create some delineation in sections. Sometimes just placing some little groupings of stuff randomly all over the board can be really pretty, and sometimes creating a pattern or sections can also be really pretty. So from there I started with the vegetables and sort of spread them in different sections, trying to balance out the colors all over the board. Next, I just flanked the ranch dip with the containers of the cheese cubes, and you want to get the containers on the board first and then kind of work around them and fill in spaces around them. Next, I added in some grain-free crackers and then zucchini, which I had rolled from really thin slices, and then added some summer squash sticks. Next, I put part of the topper of a pineapple in to just kind of beef up that decor factor, and then added in little watermelon triangles that I cut from 3 different colors of watermelon. So if you have never tried watermelon that is yellow or orange, I highly encourage you to try it if you can find it in your grocery store. We were a little leery about it just because it's not like the bright pink color, but it was actually really, really good and actually ended up being sweeter than the pink watermelon. So next I added in all 3 colors of the bell peppers, and then I started on the strawberries, cherries, and the tomatoes. Now these were carefully spread throughout the board to make sure that the colors were actually spread throughout the board. You want to make sure that that they're all kind of equally around so that the eye will, gradually go to all of the different parts of the board instead of just sort of being attracted to one section. Then I placed the kiwi and mango, which were cut into these cute patterns, then placed the green onions to give a bit more just wow factor on the corners. Next, I added a few little pineapple spears, and then I filled in the blank spots with blueberries. You want to make sure that you keep something small towards the end to fill in all of those blank spaces, because you don't want the board showing anywhere if possible. And then the very last thing that really gives it a more professional wow factor is to add in sprigs of herbs. So I added my mint on the fruit and then basil in the ranch dip. And then lastly, I had a bouquet of summer flowers that I got from the grocery store, and I just snipped off a few of the flowers to give the final perfect touches. If you loved this anti-inflammatory summer board, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to TrueWell for more sugar-free and gluten-free goodness.